Let's hand over the proceedings to Wendy. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully you've figured out who we all are, because we're going to jump straight into it. We only have half an hour. And so, starting off the conversation, is marketing tech important for the success of your brand? I'd like to start by understanding from the panelists what they think marketing tech actually is. I know for me on my journey, the last 12 months, my perception of marketing tech changed quite a bit. So maybe Alakadeep, could you start by explaining to us what you think it is and what role it plays?
Yeah, so good morning, everyone. So for a company like us, which is 30 years old, so synonymous with brands like Titan, Tanishq, Fast Track, and so many others, today MarTech is something which is so very important in terms of not only commerce, but digital transformation that we do today. It essentially helps us connect today the offline and the online. Online is today pretty small for us. We've been at it, the online sales part of it, for the last 4 years. We sell through our own platform as well as through the marketplaces. But at the same time, it is a huge medium for navigating people into the stores. So today, in terms of MarTech, we do a lot of work today with large companies like IBM, TCS, and even a whole lot of startups that help us sort of do things on the site and off the site. So in an essence, today, MarTech, today I feel for any marketeer or CMO is something which should be top of agenda. Because today, if you're not there and you don't understand what are the tools and the tech that is relevant for your brand and to enable people whether to shop, browse, experience your brand, probably you're not there at all. So in an essence, today, I would rate it as the #1 thing today. I would say even ahead of the sales that we do, because objectively, even the sales that we do are intended towards getting people to go more into the stores, since we have the largest retail network today in India.
Great, thank you. Meera?
I'd get down to very bare basic definition of marketing technology. So technology is what makes life easier. Marketing technology is what makes marketing easier, right? So these are tools developed by technologists, but used by marketeers to either make something difficult as a process easier, or make something repetitive automated, or something that's really mundane much more easier to manage. And as a marketeer, technology is playing a very important role. It always did, just that you had different definitions, and with the whole advent of digital, the focus has shifted on to digital, and that's what people equate. But even when you look at offline was also equally led by technology over time, where a lot of these surveys got replaced by instruments that measured for you effectively reach and frequency of, let's say, a TV campaign, or instruments that allowed you to figure out saying which radio stations give you the best return for your investment. So technology is coming more and more into place in marketing to fundamentally drive the 3 things that marketeers want to do, which is 1, scale up, 2, improve efficiencies and ROI, and 3, really surface insights. And that's where analytics is really big. So surfacing insights is something that technology is really helping do much better than ever before.
Awesome. Tushar, what does it mean to Group M?
Yeah, so I will say 3 things basically, and I'll bring it to a sort of focus on consumer side. So consumer discovery, consumer journey management, and consumer lifecycle value. Right? So in a way, how do we manage all 3 efficiently and effectively? That's where the role of technology is coming, and it's coupled with the data. For companies like us, which is in marketing services, they're 2 dimensions, right? Doing it for consumer and doing it for us. To simplify what we have done is basically we put consumer data at a core, and we look at the 4 areas. So how consumer engagement is changing in terms of basically entire shift from the reach to relationship kind of shift. So how do we look at full funnel? How the consumer understanding is changing, which is the insight piece. In a way, the journey is from moving from a sample data to more and more census-based data. So how do we leverage that in that context? Third piece is how measurement is changing. So again, it's no more a milestone, but outcome kind of thing. So output to outcome kind of journey. And finally, it's a content, which is either brand created or brand curated different environment which exists today. How do we manage that effectively? So these are the 4 pillars we look at.
Great. And Pankaj?
Yeah, I'm like, it's working for a tech company, and even otherwise what I'm seeing in total, out of $670 billion of total advertising market, $210 billion is already on digital, and $240 billion is on TV. And that, I don't know how many of you have read things about what Disney is doing or what most of the media companies are doing, specifically from the digital perspective, and how much of AdTech contributed $20 billion out of the $210.5 billion odd spent on digital. So it's already happening. So Wendy, what I would say is it important? It's, of course, people have realized it's way more important. It's already happening. The question is, when will it happen in India? And again, the answer is, in the last 18 months, what I've seen, the acceleration, it's phenomenal. I was reading a report just about a week back. There are 30 OTT players. I was surprised. It's like a telco sort of revolution, which is kind of going on, and video is going to be big. And I think most of the people, at least in this room, have realized it's extremely, extremely critical.
Wendy, I actually, it's going to get big. That's where, Pankaj, I have a dissonance, where I feel that technology has always been there. So, for example, when BAR comes and replaces TAM to give you the media metrics in terms of how well your TV campaigns have fed, that's technology, and that is marketing technology. When Mindshare or any of the Group M companies uses fantastically created softwares that marry consumer insights and surveys to really give you an optimized media plan to distribute your ad spots, etc., that's technology. Right? So technology has always been there. It's just accelerated now with digital coming on board, and you're getting finer and finer in terms of both targeting as well as reaching the right kind of people at the right time.
So the way I put it across is not a question of, when I say tech, I'm talking about highly advanced tech. We're not talking about using mainframes in today's world. So tech has been there for 40 years, 50 years. I'm like, ever since the invention of computer or even phone, that was tech. What I mean by marketing tech is like what Tushar said, really getting deeper into audience, deeper into measurement, the kind of tools you have, the kind of measurement techniques you have. The pure play reason why almost the entire media industry globally is looking at OTT, is looking at video on demand, is they have realized, because everyone is going back, hey, how effective are my TV campaigns? How targeted are they? And even the set-top box is getting digital. And imagine I'm sitting in my household, I'm getting a different ad compared to what Tushar is seeing sitting in Mumbai, and what, Meera, you may be seeing. So that's what I'm calling it as tech. That's the way I define it.
Yeah, and ultimately that comes down to data and how you apply data to your targeting and segmentation, right, which Tushar was also talking about. So Meera, let's talk about, we talked about in preparation for this session, how the changing media consumption landscape in India and your experience of moving from a traditional FMCG into a digital pure play, and how you look at buying and accessing your audience and understanding your customers. Can you share with us the kind of insights you've gotten out of that, and in your changing perception to how you buy and access customers?
So traditional FMCG companies fundamentally work on S&M principles, wherein brand building takes precedence over other activities online. So fundamentally, you use digital as a platform or even technology as a platform to build brands, to strengthen brands, to make your brands more aware, more salient, get the positioning right. And that was the focus while I was in FMCG, saying, how do I get my brand to be the most loved brand, to be the most engaged brand with my target audience online? But there is another side of digital that I got exposed to only after coming onto e-commerce, which is performance, right? And I think time is ripe wherein you have enough and more of even FMCG sales contribution now shifting online, where there has to be a shift from just pure play engagement to actually performance. And finding out, saying that how can I convert every touch point that I have with my customer to actually result into a sale for my brand, rather than just a touch point for my brand where people get to know about my brand and what it is about. And so that's been the real big transformation for me personally, wherein from just engagement, it's really moved to looking at marketing technology for not just engagement, but also for conversion and performance, while at Big Basket over here with e-commerce. And that's phenomenal, right? Because the moment you have a substantive share of your sales, of your brand sales moving to online, and you know that the potential to grow over here is way, way higher as compared to offline, you would want to invest in that channel and really now scale up to the next level, which is beyond just engagement to performance and beyond, in terms of how well you're able to even, like Tushar pointed out, through the consumer journey, engage, retain, and really grow the customer lifetime value.
Tushar, what's your experience with how brands are thinking about where they invest and how they attract consumers and drive sales? Is their investment and budget shifting more? Are they thinking more about, the previous speaker talked a lot about ownership and, owning the data, understanding who your customer is. Is India, brands in India thinking about that kind of being as strategic in their approach to really understanding their customer and building those one-to-one relationships?
Yeah, so I would say directionally, everybody understands and get it, and different companies and different category will be at a different journey. For example, a company like e-com may be at advance, while a company in the CPG might be starting a journey, because again, it's also a function of nature of business and kind of operation they run, right? So realization is there, everybody understands that is important. And there is also investment started going in terms of understanding consumer, and especially what I think the earlier session also has spoken about, the unified customer view, right? So how do I understand consumer from a different dimension and multifaceted behavior is demonstrating? So how do I look at from multiple lenses? So good amount of work which is started happening, and it might take some time to start surfacing it. But you will see in a couple of years good change. If I coming back to in terms of media, digital is the highest growth right now. And typical thumb rule, what we've been noticing, it's a 3-time growth of overall media industry. So media industry is growing at 10-12%, digital is growing at 30-40%. So that's the kind of growth which is happening.
And I suppose that growth is also exactly the same in terms of sales. Right, so you will see sales of possibly 10% offline, and you'll see sales of 50% online in terms of growth.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I want to add a perspective to what Meera was saying. So while it's the objective is predominantly sales, but when I see it from the lens of the brands that we own today across different categories, like for watches, for example, the objective is predominantly sales. Yes, it's engagement followed by sales online. But if I see brands like Tanishq today, it is predominantly engagement which drives them today to objectively go and purchase in the store. Because you need to look at each category objectively. Like FMCG today, groceries is today a time-saving exercise when you shop online, versus today categories like jewelry is purely experiential shopping. So for most people in India today, when they buy precious jewelry, it is not something which is only online. Yes, it is today. We also have Carrot Lane as one of our subsidiaries today. But at the same time, there is an experience to the individual, which is where the whole aspect of MarTech today, while we at the same time use tools to be able to track customers to the last click and attribute where the sale has come from. At the same time, we use MarTech tools for building engagement. Very recently, we had a chatbot for Valentine's, which I mean gave us enormous amounts of learning today. Because today, again, for us, there are categories which are so close to gifting. So it's predominantly not only sales. While performance, yes, means sales, but it's about both engagement and sales. And they don't go necessarily in the same order. They can sort of go back in different orders for different categories.
And I think it's also about understanding the customer and the customer journeys, right? Like as Andrea talked to in her presentation around the whole digital body language and how you really adapt that to your strategies. Elkadeep, can you talk a little bit about your traditional bricks and mortar retail, and you've been tasked with taking that digital. Like, what's your journey been in terms of how you apply the learnings from online into offline and from offline into online?
So today we've just about probably, I would say, completed the version 1.0 of our journey, which was essentially starting digital as an experiential medium to understand what the customer is. But having seen that and the kind of growth that we saw in the last 4 years, of course, we are not VC funded and we don't have cash burn as an objective over here. Something we are a listed company and we have very clear metrics of performance, ROI, even if it comes to digital and e-commerce. So the kind of growth that we've seen from starting maybe with the site or just about 2.5 lakh to today, 2 to 2.5 million visitors for somebody who does not even go and broadcast today about, we're an e-commerce business, and the so much of, I would say, online to offline and offline to online that we've seen is where the whole conviction is, where we are now in the next stage building our omni-channel framework, which would connect the stores, while today they are connected in certain forms, but more sophisticatedly for the cases of buy online and pick up in store, which are so very relevant for categories like jewelry. So there is a large amount of learning that the company already had about the consumer and the brands, having been in business for so many years and so many brands being today top of the market. The online learning courtesy, the visitors, and of course translating into sales and the interactions that we have through both pure channels like email, through social surveys and a whole lot of them, have given us so much insights about specific categories of people for each brand to segment and sort them, both from an offline and an online perspective. One example of that would be, let's say, Tanishq. For Tanishq today, the online consumer, as is the case for the rest of the country, is predominantly below 35 years. But in the store, it's the other way around. So we have two different sets of audiences to target. And apart from Tanishq, we have another brand called Mia, which is basically the working women. So we know precisely in a certain way which are the consumers that we target for each of those brands. Then there is Fast Track, which is a youth brand. The kind of tools that we use specifically for Fast Track are so very different from Titan. And then there is Titan I+, which is so-called a solution-oriented brand. So eyewear is very technical. It's not only about sunglasses or selling frames. It is about being able to give a customized solution today and not just trying to sort of attract people that we'll give you 2 frames free and you buy the 3rd one from us. So it's about having a continued relationship with the customer.
Excellent. And maybe picking up on that continued relationship with the customer, then moving beyond performance to understanding lifetime value. Pankaj, do you see in the customers you guys work with the desire and the capability to do attribution modeling and measurement in a way that they can truly define lifetime value and move past clicks and impressions and the traditional performance-based short-term metrics and focus on outcomes?
Yeah, I think, going back to what I was saying, everyone understands, and, whether it's Alok, Meera, everyone understands it's important, but the question is, how soon do we execute? How critical it is? We have been talking for a while now. It's just that the execution, which I've seen, Wendy, on the ground has been relatively slower, even for like-to-like countries, whether I pick up Indonesia as an example, of Philippines, or even Vietnam for that matter. The amount of dollars which looking at the GDP of India and looking at the GDP of the other countries and the kind of investments which are going and relativity in terms of the technical competence, it's immense in India, and that's the only unfortunate piece I see. Everyone understands it's critical. The acceleration of what we are talking about is the challenge which I see in India particularly.
Tushar, what's your experience?
I guess it's in general too, when I think most of the marketers have been sort of shying away so far, and I see a change in last few years, but historically they've been shying away, investing in behind the tech, because one of the reasons is also cost of media is very, very low in Indian context. So when you start deploying some of the tool, many cases it runs into double-digit percentages. So I think there is a need to be also adopt and localize some of the technology and work in that context. Because unlike many other market, India, you operate maybe a couple of dollars or maybe less than that kind of CPM. So those are the challenges you see at local market level. So that's right. Historically, you see it's a very performance-driven, very last-click attribution-driven kind of market.
Do you see that changing, though, as marketers become more sophisticated and they do adopt these kind of tools and they do understand their customer better? Surely the value of how they want to invest in reaching those customers will change. The value equation should change, right?
Yeah, I think that's what we are talking this before the session. So the role of education comes into play, right? So, and it's what you are getting out of the investment, and if that narrative built properly for a specific client, I'm sure they are going to open for that. And I think that's a gap right now.
Let's talk about education and talent, because in all the markets we operate in, this is a huge issue, right? It's the talent and understanding of both the marketing community and also the CEO community, and how you change the way you do business in order to be customer-led and customer-driven. How do you get educated here? Mira, maybe you could talk to, because you've moved from one company to another. How did you go about educating yourself when you moved into a digital pure play? And what would you like to see from partners and people in the room to help you further on that journey?
So I think I'm still on that journey to really understanding digital, even though it's been a year and a half with Big Basket, but it's different. When you start in a traditional CPG company, you are not really exposed to this, and education is difficult. You have a few people who are giving you courses, but they are as generic as it gets. So I guess it's a little more hands-on that you really learn a lot. I was fortunate to have a husband at home who was already, neck deep into e-commerce, and therefore really hastened the journey because of that kind of interaction. But it's been purely on the job, through interactions, through people, through really understanding it. And once you get a hang of it, you really start appreciating the value that it really brings to you. And not just from the point of view of being an online player. Today, if I were to go back to my job on the offline brick and mortar company, I think I would do marketing very differently. But yes, there is a clear lacuna today in the country to really onboard people onto the digital marketing tech side of things. And it's not going to be very easy for anybody who's coming in to learn it unless they are on the job and they actually do it and experience it for themselves. You don't have too many courses. Yes, there are some companies like Simply Learn and some others who basically give you some online courses and certifications, but nothing like actually doing it on the job and getting to understand it, because there are just too many nuances to it. Like Alokdeep said, there are just so many segments that you can really carve out. When I'm doing media planning on TV, there is just female, 25 plus, and a few demographic parameters here and there, and there are very few levers over here, versus an online place where you can suddenly talk to the youth differently, you can talk to the working women differently, you can talk to the older people differently, and you can talk to moms differently. And that's something that you really have to experience the power of it and the joy that it brings to you in person to really understand and appreciate how that does. And education is a gap today in the market today in India.
What's your experience, Alakadeep, and do you have any tips for the people in the room on how they could help you further in that journey?
So I am, whatever I can say, I'm a self-taught individual, so nobody taught me digital. It's just the journey of starting to work I was part of a startup team, then part of a startup agency, so it was more survival than experiential. Went on to work for banks, the whole aspect of ROI and very strong transactional metrics, whether it comes to cost per acquisition, because with banks today, well, branding is another game, but it's a lot about how transactional efficiency and at the end of the day, what is the ROI that you bring. What Titan taught me was, I would say, a lot about brands, combined with the learnings that I got from my previous past experiences and lives. I was able to put them all together. And I personally believe there is no sort of place where you can go and learn these things. It will come out of experience. Keep your minds open to the fact of whether you're working with a large size vendor, technology vendor, or an agency, and be open to experimentation. If you don't have the appetite, or your organization doesn't have the appetite for experimentation, don't abandon the ship, persist with it, and they will develop and when you are doing experimentation, not everything will be successful. Possibly just 2 or 3 things, but it will give you a lot of learning on the way. And be a little more patient with experimentation. So whether it's with a startup player or whether it's with a large size tech company or a large agency versus a boutique agency, the whole idea is only experimenting, and probably I would say real time will teach you. I can't think of a school, whether in India or elsewhere, which will teach you how to do digital marketing.
Yeah, you can learn the techniques, but if you don't really sit and do it yourself once at least, you are never going to understand. It'll all be theoretical up here.
Let's move on to data. I think Andrea talked a lot in her presentation about data ownership and really what you want to understand and control. And so continuing on the education front, I think Tushar and Pankaj, can you talk to how you work with clients to help them understand the tools and the technologies that you're using to help deliver the results? And maybe Pankaj, you could talk to also, you know, Andrea talks about her work with the WFA to break down the walled gardens. You know, how important do you think it is for marketers to own, control and understand as much about their customer as they can?
I think what both Alok and Meera said is extremely critical. Many a times, I used to work for a telco long time back, and the kind of data which most of the marketers today have, it's phenomenal. It's a gold mine. It's all about how we really slice and dice and how we utilize that particular data. And picking up on what Alok said, it's extremely, extremely critical. We do a lot of enablement sessions. I've personally been doing, along with my team, a lot of education sessions on AdTech for the last couple of years. But no matter how much any organization comes and teaches you, it's only you who has to jump on a pilot. You have to experiment. And the most important thing which Alok said is you have to be patient. You know, you cannot say, oh, I put in 10 lakh rupees on a particular performance marketing campaign through programmatic for 2 weeks, it didn't work. That's not how it really works. When you decide, take your time, be patient, decide what's critical for you. Identify those 2, 3. If you're deciding on how you're going to play around with your data, do that, take your time. But once you've done that, put it into pilot, put it into execution. And once you've put it into execution, wait, work on it, improvise. And of course, a lot of it also depends on how your organization supports innovation and all those things. I understand completely there are boundaries, but I personally believe that's really the way to do it. Most of the successful organizations globally, that's what they do, and do different stages, whether it's alpha, beta, launch, and various things. Clearly, all of us know data is a gold mine. It's all depends on what tools, what analytics we put into it, and how we really use it. And on the walled garden front, I think it's a debatable thing. But of course, certainly there are great products available in the market which helps you retain your data if that's what is extremely sensitive, and you still have various means to go and execute what you're planning to do.
Tushar, what about the Group M perspective? Obviously, I think Andrea talked a lot about really understanding what DSPs you're using, what verification tools your agencies are using, and you know, looking to adopt your own DMP, understanding your ad server, all the data coming through the ad server. You know, how much do you work with clients here in India to help walk them through the journey that you're taking them on?
Yeah, so we see our role in 2 areas, and especially this in the Indian context. I think the old and new are going to coexist for some time. And there is going to be a sort of need to integrate old and new and create more effective solutions. So that's one role we see. And second is help accelerate the transition. So in a way, play the role of catalyst to migrate people from in a new journey. So how do we help accelerate? So one of the key things we do is, beside education, is help simplify the ecosystem, because that's one of the key requirements. And how do we talk about old and new at same breath, right? So how do we compare, how do we benchmark? So that's another requirement which keep coming from various marketers. So simplifying ecosystem, helping them accelerate, experiment, and learn from them, and then take a next step out of that. So these are the few things which we do here.
Are these questions you've asked your agencies, and have you got a data strategy? What does it look like for you, Alakadeep?
So today, something he mentioned that today marketers have tons of data. So it's not, I would say, about the amount of data that you have. It's about what are you planning to do with it. To give an example, on the offline part of it, we have a in-house loyalty program called Encircle. It's got about 10 million database. It's a gold mine. But at the same time, today, what we do with it is more so important. So in our case, I wouldn't say we've sort of reached there. We are trying to marry both offline and online data. That is what we are setting up a whole data warehouse for that piece, which essentially today for online, I would say we still have tools and technologies to be able to build real-time insights. For offline today, to power the CRM campaigns that happen, that's something that we are doing through a marketing cloud. Now, today, the way we look at data, because there's such a vast variety of brands, it is essentially not something that we do broadcasting to all our customers. So there is slicing and dicing of data, basis behavior, which is available. And that's what we do today to, I would say, segment and plan our campaigns.
And Mira, do you have I guess because you're a digital pure play, it's very easy for you to form a single customer view. Do you practice individualized kind of marketing communications?
We do. So you have, like Pankaj pointed out, a lot of data when it comes to anything online. So I know the categories, for example, in groceries that a customer has browsed. So if a customer has browsed, let's say, baby products, but has not bought them, I know that she has a baby at home, right? If a customer is fundamentally sticking to a particular section which is completely health related, I'm able to classify the person as somebody who is very health conscious, right? So you have a whole lot of data over there, but and you do use it, and it is like Alok said, very important to really use that data to drive meaningful action, which means that you personalize experiences for customers and you customize the messages and communication that you land to them. We are on a journey over there. We are not yet fully onboarded, so we are in the process of doing that. And rather than it being a one-size-fits-all kind of an approach in marketing, which is fundamentally what offline is today, especially with TV, radio, etc., where you're not able to. And I would love more of marketing technology to come and deliver what Pankaj painted as a picture to me, wherein Pankaj is able to see on the same TV show a different ad versus Mira watching a different TV show, seeing a different ad. And that's where you want more infusion of marketing technology to be able to customize experiences over there as well, because that frankly is the largest spend in India today. And that's where you want more optimization to actually happen.
It's very much coming.
I'd like to add a point over
I think
here.
we need to open to audience for question. I'm getting the wind up, sorry. So I think we have a few minutes for audience questions.
We do have room for 2 questions, ma'am.
2 questions. So there's a gentleman there with the glasses on with his hand up. If someone could give him a microphone.
Yeah, hi, Sanjay Tren from Hindustan Times. I think we had a very illuminating discussion, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how each one of you, anybody can take that question, is addressing markets to one. How are you narrowcasting your messaging to address that unique individual, which is really your customer? Because customer segmentation is no more in socioeconomic categorization, A, B, the traditional methods which Tushar alluded about. All that is history now. And we have the ability to customize and narrowcast our communication so that we get bang for the buck for our brand. So maybe Pankaj or Tushar, if you could elaborate on this. And the usage of artificial intelligence, how is that helping you to look at implicit personalization and to continuously keep on honing the advertising or brand communication messaging?
Yeah, so for us, basically consumer data is becoming a core, and kind of data which we are working right now is more on the behavior as a first level of foundation, and on top of that you can layer demographic data, purchase data, any other scoring mechanism and those kind of things. That allows you to go at an individual level, but also allows you to aggregate level. So depending on your flexibility of messaging, you can go to individual level or maybe a smaller group of denomination. There is also, IAB has done a sort of predefined behavior clustering, so there are 300 odd of them. So that's also other way to look at when you're looking at aggregated level. So that's when you are starting from maybe a zero base and then creating your target group. Second way to look at your own data and form that as a core. So you know this is your core customer, and how do I expand that consumer on larger base, right? So then you go into lookalike modeling kind of sort of analytics and build your customer cohorts and then expand those audiences. So these are the two prominent ways. There are different ways to do also, using third-party data and also.
I think the only thing which I have to contribute is a little bit deviation is, one is data, personalized messaging, but do think from the creative perspective, because a lot of things fail when you have a poor creative. So do think about it when you're talking about a message personalization.
There's another question over here, if the microphone hasn't gone to anyone else. A lady over here in the corner. Last question.
My question is to Pankaj from the last statement that you made. I'm Stuti, I head marketing at Pearl Academy, which is a design institute. I have learned digital on, just like Meera and Alokdeep Singh mentioned, that on the ground. And the lacuna that I was hearing about, the training or the education which the marketeers need to have for digital, I think one of the lacuna that I'm seeing currently, and I want to know from both Tushar and Pankaj, because you're the ones who are driving digital, what is it that you're doing to educate the communication agencies or the advertising agencies to devise communication and to make them understand how a programmatic campaign would look like or should look like, how a mobile ad should be different from what comes on through YouTube or on TV. What are you doing to educating that group of people who is actually churning out communication for all marketers sitting here? We still face that problem, whether that copywriter or the art person understand what a mobile ad should look like. So are you doing something in that domain? I would be really keen to understand that.
So I'll quickly answer. One part of my answer you may not like. One is, of course, the first one is, are we doing various coaching sessions, various sessions through the agencies? We've, through various programmatic days, like in October, we had done a programmatic day where we had a couple of 100 people. We're doing those things at scale. But the only issue is, again, it's a limited team. Those kind of outreach sessions, they're only limited. The other, clearly, which personally, I don't come from, the advertising world only. I've done a little bit, but mainstream, I've done it only 2 years back when I moved into this particular role. So it's not that even in our organization, there were a lot of people who were coming and teaching me. The best tool, as of now, what I can think is go online. There's some amazing YouTube tutorials which are out there, really phenomenal. And I do encourage you to read various reports which are there. I know they are time consuming, but if you can do that, it's really going to be phenomenal. And I think working closely with agencies, because they're out there in the market, we are working along with them more and more, because that's another way for us to scale, where you can reach out to them and do various kind of sessions. So my advice is you can use one of these, all three of these options.
Just to add to that, basically, I think unlike some of the traditional media, some of the creative process is also deep-rooted into each of the platform, right? So the way you do a creative for a Facebook versus Snapchat versus Google will be very, very different. So understanding of a platform is a critical part. And again, as you mentioned, there's a good amount of work going in terms of educating those people. Having said that, I also like to highlight that good old storytelling is not going to go out of fashion. It's pretty important, and it's also core of that. So.
And there are lots of tools that can help you test and iterate on those kind of things. So I think having education around the availability of those tools is really key as well. Gentlemen and Meera, thank you very much for your time today. I think all of us will be around today for some periods of time, so you can grab us. And I hope you all have a great AdTech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Wendy, and thanks to all the panel members as well.